Hey guys, Stealthy here. Today in Wargame we're on Wonsan Harbor. It's a 10v10 tactical with the naval zones enabled. This is an important element. Because in the normal Wonsan Harbor, if you don't have these naval zones, they tend to get into infantry slugfights. Who can pump out the most infantry and who can kill off the most infantry from the enemy team? As there's very little opportunity to use vehicles, to use any sort of fire support at medium to short range without it getting killed off by the infantry. The naval variant opens up a whole new area for play. This side on the map is, well, most of this area of course is very useless. But towards the distance between Alpha and Foxtrot you can deploy ships. And, considering that there is a river here, you can even send some riverine craft up this river to do some damage to either Red 4 or potentially shield Red 4 in this case from an assault by Blue 4. At the same time, you could argue that it's not really useful to send out a ship, because there's no strategic objectives in this area, there's nothing really to capture, and bringing out ships is generally very expensive. Of course, it depends on your type of ship, but if you'd rather keep your ship intact and not having it getting blown up right away, it is going to be quite the investment, because you're going to need either the main ship at higher price point or some escorts to make sure that it can deal with anti-ship missiles. So it can be a very daunting aspect to bring a ship, because a ship, let's say at about 150 to 200 points, because trust me, you're never going to save up for a Congo at 400 points. These ships mean that you have less forces on the front line. No matter where you're playing, you're going to have fewer forces. And that could translate to a hole in your lines. Now today Natasha is going to be operating the ships here. He already deployed here. I'm going to bring a boat and he's going to fly over his command infantry inside the Panther towards this zone very quickly to make sure he can bring in his ships. And then it's always the tricky bit. Does the enemy reply with ships of their own? Do they bring in anti-ship batteries? Do they just ignore the ship altogether because they're not operating there? What is going to happen? It's just a waiting game. What's not so much a waiting game is this big aircraft, the B-5. Still strikes terror in the heart of all infantry units, as you do not want to get hit by a 3,000 kilogram bomb. Surprisingly though, it seemed to be on a bombing run, and then it seemed to veer off. For some reason it did not decide to go through with its run. Or at least not yet, because it might be coming around for another pass. And if it gets that bomb delivered to the intended target here, which is probably this concentration of Blue 4 infantry, it is going to be a very painful situation. Unfortunately the B-5 is going down, but not before it delivered the package. And let's see, did Fencer get any kills? Yeah, 35 points in kills. So not nearly as destructive as you might have hoped. But at least the infantry is being kept at bay a little bit, buying the Lijian, the Luzandui and the Granatomet some time to dig in further. On the water, we have the ships finally coming in. We have a Chamsery and an Oliver Hazard Perry, as well as a Type 21 frigate. Now the Type 21 is an interesting choice here. This is a British ship, and yeah, you wouldn't say it, they're all NATO ships. This British ship is pretty damn terrible at defending itself against anti-ship missiles. So bringing out a 135 point investment like this, which is not very good at defending itself, means you're going to have to rely on your allies to defend you. And the Chamsery might be able to do that, especially with the combination of the Oliver Hazard Perry, because the Perry, unlike the Type 21, is at least decent at defending against anti-ship missiles. Chamsery, of course, is a whoops, that's not the Chamsery. The Chamsery is a dedicated anti-ship missile killer. And with those miniguns that it carries, the Sea-Wiz, it can also deal with short-range engagements with helicopters and ground forces. And trust me, when that Sea-Wiz opens up on your infantry or your helicopter, it's going to be dead pretty soon. Unfortunately, it's not very good at dealing with helos at anything longer than 1400 meters. And that's where the Perry comes in. Because the Perry can deal with that at 3,500 meters, but it only carries 16 missiles. And the Type 21 has the capability of dealing with helos as well, but not before the helos can hit it with their anti-tank missiles, because the range is only 2100. What the Type 21 does have, which is rather nice, is the Vickers Mark 8. It's a 114mm gun, and I believe that from the gun sections on the ships, this is the highest HE value that you can get, 7 points. Versus the 3 HE from the Oliver Hazard Perry and the 1 HE from the Beaufort 60 there. I believe that the Congo is also carrying a 76, maybe 127. But for some reason the Type 21 just dishes out or delivers, don't fuse those into one word, it's never going to work. These things deliver 7 HE per hit, and they got 200 rounds to do that with. Now, considering that they are able to make it all the way to Foxtrot, the question is, why is Red not defending it, and potentially could we take over this zone? Because not only are they not defending it with anti-ship weaponry, but they're also not defending it against a helicopter, as Ass over here is just flying in his Tsifa-E, which, well, okay, at this point I have to make it, is delivering some missiles and behaving like a complete ass, as it's shooting down helicopters over their own spawn zone. Now it's doing some fancy acrobatics as it's taking some fire from the command infantry there, but at least we know where they are. So the question is now, can we deal with them in time? Could we take over this zone? Because they're moving, but unfortunately the ships are being blockaded by all the containers here. And the infantry might take quite a while getting here, at which point you could expect Red to start bringing in some more forces to defend this zone. Because hey, it's only your second reinforcement zone, and it's the only one that can bring in anti-ship units, or sea units that is. So the infantry here is standing by, and we have some further helicopters coming in. A Panther, as well as a Panther carrying command infantry. So once these guys get to that position, they might be able to take it over. Again, these are investments, especially bringing in the infantry all the way to the other side. And the Panther is not particularly known for being cheap. Fortunately, he was able to recycle his own command unit. So this is the original Panther with his command infantry inside that he deployed into Alpha initially. But Alpha is being multiply capped by TACOMs, the command vehicle there, and another Hapak infantry. So we're solidly squared away in Alpha. Where we're not doing very well is on the right flank. Because the right flank is only being held by Canadian rifles and Fusiliers. Against a couple of currently only Special Aufkläder, but there might be a whole lot of other stuff just coming down this way. They have a bunch of Royal Marines here, a Challenger 1-1, a Fox, as well as a Stormer to deal with aircraft. So they have a decent defensive line here, but if the infantry here gets killed off, then the tanks, or this tank and the Fox, are not really going to have any opportunity to shoot at anything. The Stormer does have opportunity to shoot at something, and manages to hit and kill the Su-25K. Nice kill there. Stormer already earned its own point value back and then some. Su-25K I believe is coming in at 140 points. So this thing scored almost twice its own point value. In Foxtrot, Blue 4 has been able to land their infantry. The Panther is scouting out ahead in front of the Rima. The other Panther is trying to join up, and the command infantry is digging in, getting into this building as quickly as possible. Heinrich has offloaded some Maglans, so these guys can also deal with some anti-tank units, with some armored units or vehicles, depending what comes in first. And we're going to need them towards the north of this zone quickly, as two of these Panthers are taking a lot of fire from the Spag that was just brought in as the last act from Red 4 here. This was the last unit they were able to bring in. Now Red tries to counter with an M24D. The Perry was able to hit it once, and I think hit it twice as it went down and got the infantry killed as they were going down. So the Rima fortunately don't have to deal with that at the moment. But we still need to find the command infantry and deal with them, and there are plenty of buildings where these guys could be hiding out. Now as all of this is going on, I was thinking, well, Blue 4 is probably getting a ton of points. No, they're not. No, they're not. They're at 1260 points versus 1395, so they're not actually doing that well. Yes, they're causing all sorts of mayhem in Foxtrot, and they might start pushing on to Gulf, but for the moment, they are not doing stellarly well and getting all sorts of point values, almost double what Red 4 has. Not at all. In fact, they're almost being pushed out of the middle of the map, as the Legions are now on the run from the Corps Mariniers here. But most of the time, red seems to be pushing them back into this zone. And if they lose Charlie, then that is going to cost them income. And less income means less units. In the meanwhile, the Maglans have found the command infantry and killed it. So blue now has control of Foxtrot. The question at this point is, were they expecting that? Were they prepared to capture Foxtrot? Because it's one thing to capture it, but it's another thing to be able to hold it. And if you're not able to hold this zone, if you're not able to bring in more reinforcements right now, you might be losing it very, very quickly. Because Red 4 has very short resupply lines. They can come in from here and immediately walk over to Foxtrot. The question is again, does Red have enough points? Red does seem to be sending out a tank. We see a T-62D coming down this road. That should not really be a problem for the Maglan Spike MR. But the question is, can we find it in time? Because this building section here could consistently block line of sight. As you can see, every now and then the tank pops into view. And then it just vanishes again. And yep, there we go. I'm more or less indicating where it should be. There we go. Maglans locking on, and at this point the T-62 has nowhere to go. But it survived. So the Maglans reload their weapon, fire again, and kill off the T-62D. The only other thing that they're bringing in is a Ram Recce, and we have an Anafa coming in from AS with some more reconnaissance infantry. So, assumedly, more Maglans. The ships have now taken a position inside the harbor, but from this position they cannot really do anything. The only thing that you could argue that the Olivars and Perry can do at this point is protect these units here from airstrikes using those long-range SM-1 missiles. But the issue still is they cannot use their main gun. You can see that this Perry only fired 9 rounds of its main gun. The Type 21 hasn't even fired its main gun at all, nor its Exocets of course, and its Sea Cats haven't gotten an opportunity to fire either. Chamsery was able to do some damage, has fired off almost 30 rounds, and is so far not really useful against anti-ship planes or anti-ship missiles, because there simply aren't any. And this is, or what this might be, a conscious strategy by Red. Just don't give in. Don't send out anti-ship planes, because the anti-ship planes are generally very, very expensive. And it's going to take you several salvos to deal with the Perry. And the Perry, where it is it's no threat whatsoever. It's no problem. Now we have a French ERC-90 here taking the scenic route. These things, as you can see, are amphibious, and he was probably being brought in either before they captured the zone or when they were still contesting the zone, and Red got the zone every now and then. So the ERC-90 is happily making a floating travel or floating journey all the way from Alpha over here towards Foxtrot. It's going to take them quite a while to get there, as its amphibious speed is 48 kph, which is still on the higher end of the spectrum. Unfortunately, its autonomy is good, otherwise you might find this thing stalling in the middle of the ocean here. Now, time to push out a little bit from this section. We have the Maglans to deal with any tanks or armored vehicles, some infantry, and a VAB, which can deliver some suppressive fire with an M2 Browning, but not too much. It is not a VAB 2013 with a 20mm autocannon. We also get a Merkava 1 from Heinrich. Merkava 1 is an okay tank, but it does not stand up against the super heavies that might be coming this way. Now at this point the Chamsery gets destroyed by an Su-27M. Chamseries are good at dealing with anti-ship missiles, but anti-tank missiles are for some reason not registered by the missile defense system. And they are able to get through the whole missile shield very, very easily. Now somebody decided to invest heavily in infantry here. We have a quad stack of Spetsnaz. And as good as the Corps Mariniers are, they are just not good enough against the napalm weapons that the Spetsnaz are deploying against them. Unfortunately, a Nighthawk seemed to come over, there it goes, tried to drop on top of the Spetsnaz but missed them and hit the building right next to them. So we still have all of these Spetsnaz here. They are forced to just keep jumping around, but they're getting backup from the Chinese. We have a triple stack of Lijans, as well as a couple of Commandosi, which are constantly jumping from building to building here. making it very difficult for blue to get a consistent drop on them. The right flank had the Stormer, it had the Fox, and it had the Challenger, and while those units are still here, it's not going to be safe for them to stay here for much longer, as we have Spetsnaz and VDV coming in, which is a very potent combination, because the Spetsnaz will deal with any infantry, and the VDV will deal with any vehicles that might be threatening the Spetsnaz. So these things are very powerful together. A Challenger 1 against one of those missiles from the VDV-90 are not going to survive for very long. The Challenger 1 just does not have the armor to stand to that. Spetsnaz are going to chew right through the Fusiliers. Maybe the Fusiliers can buy the Challenger some time, but the Challenger was already spotted and the VDV took it out with a side shot. So Red just keeps pushing here, and at this point this flank is just dead. There's nothing defending this tree line. Once you have infantry in here, it becomes a nightmare situation. Because where do you go to stop them? Do you set up a defensive line of infantry here? Do you pull back and hold your units here? If you do that, you're risking your main spawn zone, which also means your air support. So it's a really tricky situation once the infantry gets into this line. And that's part of the charm of Once in Harbor. Try and deal with that. As you can see, Blue 4 is requesting their own forces to fall back, because right now they can just not hold up to this slaughter from the Legion 90s, the Commandosi, and the Spetsnaz on the left flank. So far they still have some supporting units. We still have a Leopard 2A1, we have some transports here, but nothing too severe. And most of the infantry here that still survived is on the run. They are not interested at all in staying here. The Nighthawk is desperately trying to drop off some bombs and help these guys out. So far it dropped off one of its paveways, and it seems to be coming around for another pass. I'm just not sure if it has a good target. There we go, dropping off the missile. This is Goldbrand. Goldbrand might have gotten the kill on the infantry group that we saw over here. Not too sure. Yep, he gave the indication plus 25, so that's likely VDV. That's another good kill there. Now the Legion 90 normally aren't that good against transports, but if the transport's wounded enough, then even the Legion 90 with their napalm weaponry can finish it off pretty easily. Commandosi have no such problem dealing with transports, and they carry the RPG-7, which is of course very potent against these things. And the only thing that's standing between the Commandosi and the Legion and the rest of the base is a handful of units. KCT, Leopard 1A5 and 02, some transports with autocannons, one group of Corps Mariniers and one command infantry, and that's it. The Leopard 2 is standing by, currently way outside the range of the RPG-7s, but you still don't want to get too close, and the only thing that we have spotting here is the KCT from BAM. So we're going to need some more units, and I'm not sure that the NACAF is the right unit to go with. Neither would infantry be a good option, because the infantry is going to get killed off by the Spetsnaz very quickly. So Blue 4 is in quite a pinch here. Fortunately they still have the other flank, and if they can play their cards well, they might be able to push on Gulf. And if they can cut off the flow of infantry from this section, they might be able to contain Red's aggression onto Charlie and the other zones that they're consistently threatening. KCT getting slightly too happy about scouting here, and the Legion are immediately punishing them. And unfortunately that was the last reconnaissance unit that Blue had over here. Now infantry inside a building like that is hard to spot anyway, but at least they knew a little bit about the transports moving towards this section. Donnie was able to capture one of these stalwarts, and we can just see that there's an attack marker here as a group of, I believe, Commandosi were able to quickly surrender or quickly retreat back into the woods before they took too much fire. But if Goldbrand could bring in that Nighthawk again and deal with the units over here, that would be really, really handy. Goldbrand is in fact requesting an airstrike, requesting a spotting for his Nighthawk. And if we can get the spot here, if the infantry is still in a quad stack, that could be a really nice bombing run. And get him about 100, maybe 120 points, depending on how many units he can capture in his blast radius. In the north, we have very little activity at the moment. I think that Red might be at this point overestimating what Blue has over here. because it's really not that much. They have some Rima, Maglans, we have another group of Maglans slightly more to the north, one Barkan AA unit, we have a Hovet, a couple of transports, a Ramreki, and that is it. Now yes, this force is able to hold off some units for now, but a consistent effort by Red 4, especially with all of that high-ranking infantry, Spetsnaz, Lijan, Commandosi, they can chew through these guys pretty quickly. At which point Blue 4 is going to be hard-pressed to hold on to this zone. In the middle we still have the Eagle circling around from Goldbrand, trying to deal with anything that might be threatening his Nighthawk. And unfortunately, we have a different sort of threat that's going to town on these Dutch infantry units here. The Spetsnaz are coming forward once again. They're taking some fire from this fire support vehicle here. But the Corps Mariniers and the Jaeger are really not going to be able to hold out against the Spetsnaz. The command infantry so far has not been spotted. But if these Spetsnaz keep up their pace of moving forward and capture this building, or potentially this one, they will be able to spot the command infantry and Blue will lose Charlie. So at this point we are in a pretty tough situation for Blue. They're backing up, they're trying to hold everything together here. And unfortunately they still have to contend with the Su-27M that consistently flies over this area every now and then. And starts to really threaten the position. There it is. Now, the Nighthawk was able to do a bombing run. And Goldbrand just jumped up to 105 points from 65. And he again very adequately indicates plus 20 times 2. So he killed off 2 groups of infantry. Also managed to shock the hell out of the SBS that got caught in the blast radius there. But at least they're alive. So Buhaj can keep spotting for the Nighthawk as it's going to be coming in again soon. Su-22 flies in, immediately gets chased down by Goldbrand's Eagle. And he gets the kill, but not before he takes a missile himself, as the Su-27M is trying to get the kill on the Eagle here. This is something else that the Su-27M can do, and is rather good at. Long-range anti-air weaponry. It carries 4 R-77s, and these things are no joke. And then it just consistently flies over this area. It just circles here, waiting for its next unsuspecting victim that might be going towards this area to do either deliver some bombs or to get some paveways off. If it gets spotted, it's going down. And we have further anti-infantry solutions coming in. The Avia-28. The Avia-28 dropping right on top of nothing here, as it might be suspecting that there's a command unit inside there. Fortunately, Blue Force command unit is nowhere near. It's a Hachi Nishiki hidden right behind this building over here. So for now, they are perfectly safe and holding on to this zone. Scores currently 500 points more for Red 4. 2735 versus 2255. So this thing can still go either way. But they have lost an important zone, Charlie. Interestingly, they know where the command unit is. Red 4 has driven it slightly too far forward, and it is getting marked by multiple people where the attack position needs to be. At which point Goldbrand says thank you very much, brings in the Nighthawk, drops a bomb, and another one. Evax does not take a missile, meaning that the Su-27M is currently not there, and kills off the command vehicle. It's another 100 points for Goldbrand. And it means that this zone temporarily is not being controlled by Red 4, means less units coming in from Red. Unfortunately, the north is now taking napalm fire. We have the VAB, which is a survivor, but the Rima 85 got destroyed, both of the squads that were here. Chukyon-sa dealing with a couple of Morskaya Pekota. Fortunately, they were able to kill off most of them, as these were 2 squads. And they are getting help from the Anafa. Anafa only has a 7.62mm gun, but in this situation, it is helpful. Unfortunately, it does not defend its own infantry against airstrikes like that. It was able to kill off the infantry here, but it turned into a bit of a sudden death as both the Red 4 infantry and the Blue 4 infantry died, leaving no infantry. Actually, I stand corrected, they're still here. The Morskayas are still here. The Anafa tries to reacquire. Angles again. not a particularly accurate weapon at range usually, but at this short range, 75% accuracy and we get the kill. Or at least, this time around I'm relatively certain that they got the kill. Blue on the right flank is pushing back against the incursions from red for infantry. Unfortunately, they don't have enough AA to deal with these little bastards here. The KHS Mi-28TB. Sorry, Mi-8, not the Mi-28. This one is only armed with a machine gun that's useful at the moment. The rocket pod's not so much, as it consistently dances around and has taken a hit to its ammo box. You saw that pop up for a moment. So this thing is going to have far fewer ammunitions left than it might intend to, and is now backing off to get itself repaired. Unfortunately, blue has further issues, as another artillery salvo comes in, and this might have been a mortar battery or two. There's like two separate mortars firing from that position, dealing consistently effortless damage against the infantry here. And they just get wiped out. There is not that much that they can do against a mortar shelling like that. Only hope that they don't get hit, which is not something that's going to happen anytime soon. Two aircraft from Goldbrand getting the kill on... That is... Is that the Su-27M? Where are you at, buddy? I think that was the Su-27M. That's good news, because it makes the Eagles a lot safer, and it makes sure that the tanks, or any other vehicles that might be hit by ATGMs, are quite a bit safer as well. Unfortunately, the Eagles are now on stand down. They're being resupplied, they're being refueled, and right at that point the Avia-28 comes in again. Let's see what it's going for this time around. It's again dropping on a random location. It's probably hoping that there's still blue for infantry there, but fortunately there's no infantry anywhere near that position, as the most forward unit in this forest is a stalwart, which is the only unit that is capable of actually maneuvering pretty quickly through these woods for a wheeled vehicle. The front line, if you want to call it that, is being held by Volksarmjäger, which only have their HGM online, or their anti-tank weapon, the Carl Gustaf M2. Main weapons are disabled, and they are not dealing with infantry at long range. They're only here as a picket line against transport aggression. And it seems that we have our first volunteer coming up right now. The question is, how close do you want to get? Volksarmjäger don't want you to get too close, and they wipe it out quickly. And by not activating the submachine gun and the machine gun, they make sure that they don't get into a long-range skirmish with the infantry that's probably hiding out in here. So it's a very good choice here from Ole Olaf to make sure that he's not going to get pinned down by the enemy infantry here. Now, good coordination here, as we have THK the Beast saying, look, we have a 4 stack of infantry here, and Goldbrand saying, we'll take a minute or so to get repaired, but yeah. So he's ready. They're coordinating their defenses on this end, and they have to, because there's really not that much that they still have between the infantry that's pushing here and their own zone. Scores are currently still very close. 3090 versus 2840. So these guys are still very, very close to each other, and neither seem to be able to force a draw or force the enemy to give up a zone. But this is not looking good. We have Spetsnaz coming in, we have Commandosi coming in, and we have Legion coming in. The Legion, fortunately at the moment, are not quite in range yet for the FHJ-84, but that probably won't take too much longer. Shayetet 13 are trying to do their best to keep them at bay, but they just can't. There's too much of the infantry here. Rimas are on the wrong side of the building, are not able to deal with the infantry right now, as the Shayetet are going 1 versus 7 on the Commandosi. And at this point, if the Commandosi make way for the Legion can bring that weapon to bear on the Rima, which the Rima, I can guarantee you, are not going to enjoy. To make matters worse, those mortars that we saw firing earlier to the right flank of the map have now been relocated and are providing assisting fire for Red 4 infantry over here, as we have potentially a Buratino, or napalm-like weapon, delivering as much fire as they can, blocking the Rima's escape line, as the Rima are very quickly being surrounded by the Commandosi, Bocheongsu and the Lijian. No more Rima. So what do we have left? We have a short arrow, AA. We have a very, very cheap fire support vehicle. We have one group of Commandos Para, we have a NICAV, and we have a Maglan, which is currently on the edge of taking napalm bombardment fire. That's it. That's all that stands between the Red 4 infantry here and the command infantry from Blue 4. How long do you expect these guys to hold? Especially considering that we also have the AV-28 delivering some surprises for Blue 4. Narrowly, the Commandos Para avoid death there, as this was the building that they were in. Okay, they might not all have been killed off, but they probably would have taken about 4 to 6 guys' losses. At this point, some of the Blue 4 players are starting to get really nervous, and Fat Nigger has left the game here. Natasha at this point says, ooh, they must be mad. Yeah, they're coming in awful close. The Type 21 is being redirected to provide fire support onto the harbor district here. But again, there's really nothing that they can do, because all of these containers are getting in the way. And unfortunately, the Type 21 with its Vickers Mark 8 and the Oliver Hazard Perry need a direct line of sight. Well, I suppose you could say these guns would normally be used as either beyond line of sight or indirect fire weapons, using a parabolic arc. Unfortunately, Wargame doesn't have that, so these ships are just sitting here as very, very big point investments, which are rather useless at the moment, unfortunately. Scores are 3,000 for Blue versus 3280 for Red. Red, once again, has captured Charlie. Blue 4 has recaptured the woods, so it seems that at the moment there's not that much that is threatening this position, considering that they were able to take this much terrain without being heavily contested. We know that SU-25K coming in, and I'm actually waiting for the Eagles to get spawned in again. But the Eagles are currently tasked elsewhere. They were defending the Oliver Hazard Perry and the Type 21, and potentially the infantry against bombing runs here. And just look at the amount of infantry that Red has over here. Yes, they may have taken some damage, but they're still coming. And the Commando Para were able to scout out some, but lose 8 of their own guys in the process. Blue 4 desperately trying to reinforce this position with Messiah At, Maglan, Achsarit, Vuurploeg. These guys are trying to hold on with everything they have. But right now, Red is just very, very gently, but no doubt about it, pushing them out of this zone. Maybe the aircraft can at least hold off against enemy airstrikes. And there goes the SU-25K. Thank you, Eagles. Well done there. The question is, when does the next boot of infantry get brought in from Red? Because Red just keeps bringing in, and they have more income than Blue does. Blue is only getting +1 from Foxtrot. They're getting +1 from Alpha and +3 from Bravo. Red has +3, +4, +4 and +3. So they're getting far more income. And that's why they were able to mount an assault onto this zone. Which, I must add, is not just being orchestrated by one player. We have Silent Fatality, we have Texor. I wouldn't be surprised if we have mortar support from another player, and Jelsin is coming in with further infantry. Dokole 7, so we have 4 players at least pushing onto this area. Commander Para has been destroyed, the Oshkosh is running for its life, Vuurploeg in full retreat. We have one group of Legion 90 with a VAB 2013. The VAB currently does not have suitable range, so its autocannon is not likely to be useful. At this point, a little bit of friendly fire incident here by Red, as they're pretty much hammering their own buildings. Legionnaires going up against 20 Morskaya Pekota. We have 7 VDV, 1 transport. These guys are getting hammered completely. THQ the Beast is saying get a fighter patrol. This is exactly what Goldbrand has been doing. Goldbrand's fighters at the moment are intercepting, and very adequately so, the 2 Avia 28s that are coming in from the right flank of the map, joining the fray just to the rear of these aircraft. Red tries to join in Again with the J-35S, not actually doing that much damage to the Eagles. Not sure if one of the Avias went down, but I don't believe so. And at this point, both the Eagles have been able to withdraw. The J-35 did not get any kills, but did damage one of the Eagles. And the Eagles fired off most, if not all, of their weaponry, which means that at the moment the Eagles are not going to be able to help out against the next air assault that is undoubtedly coming this way. The Oliver Hazard Perry still has 8 anti-air missiles left. The Type 21, of course, has all of its Sea-Cats because no aircraft decided to get into range of the Type 21. But there is just nothing left to defend the command infantry. We have one Oshkosh, and considering it's not being captured yet, means that Red is not close enough yet to capture it. But that is only a matter of time, as there's just nothing standing between them, and they could just easily be scouting up and keep pushing. To make matters worse, they've neutralized the zone, which is a good first step for Red, as it means that Blue is no longer able to quickly bring in reinforcements here. So at this point, we either have to kill the command infantry, or consider giving up the zone, or feeding the enemy another 100 points. That is the consequence of not leaving here. So, with 5 minutes left on the game, what are we going to do? Scores still very close, 33-95 versus 35-45. VDV are currently getting really close to the command infantry, but thanks to the containers over here, the infantry cannot quite see each other yet, until the command infantry moves to the front of the building and gives up their own position. At which point they're trying to get the hell out of here, but there's nowhere to go. Unfortunately, you cannot get into a friendly transport. So the last officer, at least what I'm assuming is an officer, is trying to run away. At this point, so afraid that he's running through walls, but it's not to be. And that's the end of Blue 4's incursion into Foxtrot. Blue 4 has lost the zone, Red 4 has recaptured it, and it says that they have about 150 points of infantry here. So if there is a Nighthawk available, then this would be a good time to bring it in. We have some other units coming in. The Nighthawk coming in from the different angle. It seems to go for, I don't know, this building? What's in there? Goldbrand? Goldbrand not getting any points there. And the one Eagle that was able to get airborne again has been taken out by one of the aircraft that were going after it. So unfortunately Goldbrand has lost an aircraft there. And the pretty much consistent air patrol that he had over there with 2 Eagles is no more. At this point, the surviving ships here are taking fire. We have mortar fire coming in, but we also have the MiG-25 BM, a Seed aircraft, getting a radar signature from the Type 21 and able to deliver damage to it without the Type 21 being able to defend against it or return fire. So the Type 21 has taken significant damage, fully on fire, and is trying to get the hell out of here. The Oliver Hazard Perry has taken some damage, is on fire, but is otherwise alright. And at this point, the Seed probably does not dare to get into range of the Perry, as the Perry is able to return fire at a range against the MiG-25 BM. The Perry gets hit, returns fire, MiG dances around the missiles. Avia 28 comes in, tries to drop on the position of the Perry, almost gets it as well. Nice splash to the starboard of the Oliver Hazard Perry, no damage there. And unfortunately not able to take out the bomber. Actually, yep, that is the Avia 28. And considering I saw an aircraft evac there, I'm considering that that's Goldbrand with the second Eagle that survived the battle and is now back in the skies dealing with enemy air threats. Blue 3640 versus 3,900. And as they wisely say, we gotta pull back of land-based ESMs or land-based ASMs will wreck us. We need to get out of here before they decide to bring in anti-ship missiles. Interestingly, they haven't brought in any of their own units yet, but they are bringing in a ship, which is a very curious choice at this point. As you can see, the Type 21 is more or less able to defend itself with the Sea-Cats, but not consistently. Perry turns around, and it has to, because these missiles are mounted on the bow here. Normally, ships, or at least the bigger ships, have 4 harpoon tubes to the starboard and 4 to the left, or to the port. This one fires it from a magazine in the bow. You can see that the missiles are being brought up here to the bow of the ship. So unfortunately it fires them one by one by one, instead of firing in a salvo. And this is something that the Najin is capable of dealing with. Najin not having that good anti-ship missiles. It only has 2 termites, which it already fired. This was absolutely not the right ship to bring in. And as it only has medium sea whiz, which seems to be concentrated to the rear of the ship. Yep, no sea whiz on the front. It does not have the capability of dealing with anti-ship missiles from the bow of the ship. Which means that the parry and the Type 21 might be able to kill it off anyway. One more hit should do it. Harpoons flying all over the place, exocets joining in. Another miss. And there's the hit. 120 points for Natasha. Very, very close there. The parry survived on a slither of health, down to its last bit of hit points. At which point we unfortunately have an aircraft coming in. But they were able to intercept the missile, and both the Type 21 and the parry make it out alive. Had they lost either of these ships, Red 4 would have instantly gained 135 or 165 points. So it is imperative for Blue to keep these ships alive for just another 5 seconds, as otherwise it might not have been a draw. Very, very close match there. Star of the match at the moment, Goldbrand, with his Nighthawk and his 2 Eagles, keeping the skies clear and delivering all sorts of damage to ground units, as they were consistently using 4 stacks of infantry and presenting very, very nice and high value targets to the Nighthawk. Natasha with his ship, or her ship, I'm assuming it's his, because honestly, how many female players of Wargame do we have? Natasha able to do 561 points in damage and lost 495 points due to trying to hold off Red on the right flank, on the left flank in Fox, but just getting so many units thrown at him and his allies that were helping him out there. He was not able to hold on. Anyway, very, very close match. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what your thoughts are down below. And if you enjoyed this match and you want to keep watching these videos, be sure to check out the rest of my channel. And if you want to help me make more videos, then consider becoming a patron, a helper of this channel for only a couple bucks a month. That would really help. So, that's it. Thank you for watching. If you have a replay like this, be sure to send it in through the link in the description. And otherwise, I'll see you soon for more videos.